Welcome to the Chris Levels Show, Politics and Prophecy. For the next hour, he will share with you his theme of living life based on principles and not feelings. It's time for a return to our Judeo-Christian roots of laws and repent from the progressive liberal philosophy of what's convenient and feels good at the moment. Join him as he uncovers and exposes the spiritual wickedness that is robbing us of our inheritance that Jesus Christ promised us as a nation if we are obedient to his ways. Here's the host of the show, Chris Levels.
I hope you enjoyed your weekend as well as I did. The studio line is 810-866-3400. Toll-free line is 866-992-2275. Any of your comments can be sent to politicsandprophecy@gmail.com. Feel free to do so. But anyway, this has been a busy weekend. I want to say a prayer, keep those in mind, the people that suffered in the natural disasters down in Mississippi and suffered damages and lost lives. We've had quite a few things going on, especially with this immigration deal going on in Arizona. I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to touch on what's going on with Parker and Stone of South Park Central. Even though I don't watch the show, there's been some controversy going on behind one of the shows that was going to depict the Prophet Muhammad in a bear costume, and now they want to kill the writers of the show. But I'm going to touch on that also. So actually, I'm going to get started right away here. And by the way, I want to emphasize that on May 15th, we are having a free barbecue that is going to be put on as in conjunction with a presentation for the Kangen water, so that you can actually see the machine, you can taste the water that comes out of it, you can see it. We have a speaker who's going to, in fact, be in Lansing this week. He's from the Port Huron area. So please, if you're interested in your health and you want something that is foolproof, that is not a scam, then please come see this. The commercials are on. You can also get information by writing me again at politicsandprophecy@gmail.com. I will be happy to share more details with you about it. So now let's get on with this, because I am interested in getting to Jesse Jackson today. But first off, we're going to start off. It's an article by Joseph Farah, and it's called Carbon Phobia, Not Me. And he says that there's a pollutant much worse we should be worried about. And he asks, are you afraid of carbon? Do you worry about the size of your carbon footprint? Do you lie awake at night worried about how carbon dioxide might destroy the planet? I don't. And I'm simply amazed that so many otherwise intelligent people have been taken in by one of the biggest hoaxes in the history of the world. The notion that a naturally occurring gas, one absolutely vital to life on planet Earth, is being produced by man's activities at such levels that it threatens apocalyptic catastrophe. It's not true. There's no evidence to support the hysteria. It's all a scam put forward by powerful people who want more control over your life and the lives of others. It's the worst kind of superstitious nonsense. Yet, people believe it. They believe it because, quote, scientists, unquote, say it. They believe it because they're taught to believe it in school and in college. They believe it because the media tell them to believe it. They believe it because Madison Avenue tells them to believe it. And of course, they believe it because governments all over the world promote it because it empowers them. Nevertheless, I tell you there is nothing to worry about with regard to your, quote, carbon footprint, unquote. God is not going to punish you or the world's population because of a, quote, carbon footprint, unquote. He made the world from nothing by breathing it into existence, not by assembling or rearranging atoms and molecules, but by creating all of them from nothing. God doesn't care about carbon footprints. God cares about sin footprints. He didn't tell us not to exhale. He didn't tell us not to populate the planet. He told us to be abundant and multiply. He never hinted we have anything to worry about with regard to our use of natural resources. He made a great big planet and gave us a few key rules to live by. He told us if we followed those rules, we would have a longer and better life. And knowing that we would not be able to keep those few simple rules, he even gave his only begotten Son as a sacrifice for those trespasses so that we would have the chance to live eternally with him. Maybe that sounds like a fairy tale to some of you. I've got news for you. That's reality. Global warming is not. Man-made catastrophic climate change is the myth. Your carbon footprint means nothing to God. It's your sin footprint that counts. Are you leaving behind a sin footprint? That's what I would concern myself with. The Bible tells us that sin is the problem in the world. It's going to get worse before it gets better. You can see it already throughout the world. Don't concern yourself with the superstitions of men, things like carbon footprints. Concern yourself with the priorities of your Creator, things like your sin footprint. The nice thing about your sin footprint is that it can be erased, wiped clean, just like it never existed. Try that with a carbon footprint, which, according to the witch doctors of global warming, can be traded but never eliminated. All you have to do to erase your sin footprint is repent in the name of Jesus, who died on the cross as your substitutionary sacrifice. He rose from the dead to seal the deal. He paid your ransom. All you have to do is accept it with the sincerity of penitent heart, and you can live forever in paradise. It's a good deal. If you reject it, you will find out just how bad global warming can be. So remember, carbon phobia will get you nowhere. But we all need to have a healthy fear of sin. That's the ultimate pollutant in this world. It's the ultimate toxin. It's the ultimate threat to your life and the lives of everyone else on planet Earth. I think that's very well written. I thank Joseph Farah for his insight and depth on these kind of matters. And speaking of carbon footprints, I don't know if you all are familiar, but there's a book out. It's called Climate Gate. It's by Brian Sussman, and it is moving up the charts right now. I believe it's #1 in Amazon. If not, it is going to get there quickly. But it totally debunks the environmentalist movement in terms of their global cooling, global warming, climate change. And the fact that you could sit there and have the nerve to build a movement around climate change when the climate changes every single day, usually during the day, and then have people that have been indoctrinated enough to believe this mess is just amazing to see where we are in society, how gullible we are, and how willing we are just to accept lies because of the level of education and indoctrination. I should say indoctrination, not education, because those that are educated know that this stuff doesn't make sense. But the fact that we have been massively assaulted. Every time you turn on TV now, it seems like everything is go green, go green. It seems like the hippie movement has finally come to pass in full force. Another thing about the lawlessness in America, I was very proud that the state of Arizona stood up and decided that since the federal government wouldn't protect its citizens, which is one of the few things that it's supposed to do, unlike making people pay for other people and making you pay for a product and then threatening you with jail. But one of the purposes in the Constitution that's laid out is for the federal government to protect its citizens from enemies, foreign and domestic. But yet, it's been going on for a while that our federal government refuses to do anything about our border. George Bush started out with a 2,500-mile fence. Then it went down to 750 miles. Then it turned into a virtual fence, and yet crime is going crazy down there near the border. So I'm very proud of the legislature in Arizona for taking matters into their own hands in terms of protecting American citizens, because we're not all citizens of the world. We're still Americans, and I'm proud of it. But the fact is that you have a congressman from Arizona who is urging the Obama administration not to cooperate when illegal immigrants are picked up by local police if the tough new state immigration law survives legal challenges. This is amazing. U.S. Representative Raul Grijalva, a Democrat and civil rights activist, spoke to thousands of people gathered at the state capitol and called on President Barack Obama to fight the law, promising to march in the streets and invite arrest by refusing to comply. We're going to overturn this unjust and racist law, and then we're going to overturn the power structure that created this unjust, racist law. Obama has called the new law misguided and instructed the Justice Department to examine to see if it's legal. It requires police to question people about their immigration status, including asking for identification if they suspect someone is in the country illegally. Opponents say it would lead to racial profiling because officers would be more likely to ask people who look Hispanic. Well, I guess if the Hispanics are the ones that are here illegally in the most numbers, then I guess we should be asking them if they're here legally, if they're committing crimes, if they're getting government benefits or benefits from American citizens. I guess we have a right to know what your status is here in the United States. Supporters have dismissed concerns about profiling, saying the law prohibits the use of race or nationality as the sole basis for an immigration check. Governor Jan Brewer, who signed the measure Friday, has ordered state officials to develop a training course for officers to learn what constitutes reasonable suspicion someone is in the U.S. illegally. And State Senator Russell Pierce, the Mesa Republican who sponsored the legislation, said it's pretty disappointing that opponents would call on the federal government to refuse to cooperate with Arizona authorities. Again, these people, what you have to understand is people like this Representative Raul, whatever his name is, these people are progressives. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about a land where rule of law triumphs rule of man. It's all about the fact that they want to stay in power. They want to streamline the process of immigration so that these people that are here that have broken laws, and let's not forget that is the first thing. They broke the law. They were criminal when they came here without proper documentation. And even getting into, and I believe we have done that, in terms of the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment and how that has been skewed to allow anchor babies to be born in the United States, further imposing upon you and I as individuals and the debt that we have to pay and the fact that our lifestyle will suffer, the fact that our dollar will go down because of the fact that we have to keep printing more money to support these entitlement programs for these people. It's just not right. And it's just amazing that we are living in a time when you have your representatives who swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, their state constitution, their national constitution, and yet they don't even bat an eye when it comes time to just turning their backs on it. But hopefully people like him, we can get out of office and get people who at least want to cooperate with the laws that people that were much wiser than us set down. So we're going to go for a break, and when we come back, we're going to get with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Talk to you later.
Chris will be right back with more Politics and Prophecy on Victory 600. Stay tuned.
If you would like a CD of today's show, please send a donation of $10 to G&L Communications, Post Office Box 13171, Flint, Michigan, 48503. Again, that's G&L Communications, Post Office Box 13171, Flint, Michigan, 48503. Thank you for your generosity and have a blessed day. There have been many of you that have heard the Kangen water commercials on this show and have visited the H2O Revival site and requested information. Well, we are going to do something special for you. On May 15th, we are hosting a free barbecue along with a presentation given by 6A member Don Gordon. This man has spoken all over the country about Kangen water and done many demonstrations. Email me at politicsandprophecy@gmail.com if you are interested in attending. The price is free, but we must know in advance how many visitors to expect. On May 15th, you will get to meet and speak with me also as we enjoy a few hours of fun and fellowship together. email me at politicsandprophecy@gmail.com for more information and to RSVP. Or call G&L Communications at 810-407-6893. That's 810-407-6893.
In Japanese, Kangen means return to the origin. Kangen water is produced in your home when simple tap water has been filtered, then restructured through ionization. During this ionization process, several important things happen to alter the structure of the water, making it more useful to the body. Kangen replaces water-soluble acids with calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and trace minerals to create great-tasting alkaline water. It aids in the displacement of acids through the body's normal channels of elimination, including the kidneys, bowel, lymph, and skin. Nature has produced miracle waters in several places around the world. The native people in these areas all enjoy long and healthy lives. The secret to these waters is that they are clean, alkaline, microclustered, and antioxidant rich. For more information on how you can enjoy these health benefits and have great tasting water, go to h2orevival.com. That's h2orevival.com.
Now is the time to visit internationally recognized wellness advisor Dr. Silvio J. Cazzetto and his team at his Burton location at G4150 South Saginaw. With centers throughout the area, many of his locations have chiropractic, yoga, massage, acupuncture, herbal healing, and more. With years of training in nutrition, yoga, chiropractic, and life counseling, our techniques and healthcare systems are years ahead of the rest. Come to a better way of natural healthcare. Call 810-742-1880 for an appointment now. That's 810-742-1880.
Now back to Politics and Prophecy with Chris Levels here on Victory 600 WSNL.
And you are here with Chris Levels on Politics and Prophecy. Again, the studio line is 810-866-3400. Toll-free line is 866-992-2275. You can email your comments to politicsandprophecy@gmail.com. I do appreciate your comments. And, of course, we are looking for donations, and I appreciate, from the bottom of my heart and with all humility, all of those that have donated to the program so far. We are going to be on for another month at least, and we are actively looking for sponsors as well as advertisers. So you can donate to the show at G&L Communications, Post Office Box 13171, Flint, Michigan 48503. And believe me, I understand that times are tight for a lot of you, but it really makes me appreciate even more those who have donated to the show and what kind of sacrifices and the thought that it takes to write that check. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the kind words also. And now we're going to get into Repudiating Jesse Jackson. Again, this Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson wrote this book. It's called Scam: How the Black Leadership Exploits Black America. It says Jesse Jackson is a racist demagogue, a problem profiteer of the highest order. I had the displeasure of encountering Jesse Jackson and his cohorts during a December 10th, 2001 meeting at the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Jackson's Rainbow Push Trade Bureau. Toyota's Vice President of Corporate Communications, Irv Miller, was meeting with Jackson's team and approximately 200 to 300 mostly black businessmen and women to explain his company's 21st century diversity strategy and its budget of $700 million targeted to minority communities. The background motivation is more interesting, the corporate version of white fear. Miller showed up and gave his spiel to appease because Jackson raised a stink about a Toyota advertisement that he claimed was deeply offensive to blacks. The ad featured a black man with a gold RAV4 Toyota Sport utility vehicle embossed on his front tooth. In response to the ad, Jackson said, "The only thing missing is the watermelon." Jackson, of course, sees racism whenever there is an opportunity for a shakedown of a major corporation. Seeing his chance, he was on Toyota like ugly on an ape. The company kowtowed. I almost did not attend the meeting, but my director of public relations, Ermias Alemayehu urged me to go. I arrived in my stylish but casual Bond fleece jacket. Almost all the businessmen in attendance wore suits. We took seats at the very front of the room. Once the meeting started, it was evident that it was the Jesse Jackson show. Jackson had the microphone for the majority of the time, and he ran the meeting. He asked for a show of hands of all in attendance who were members of his trade bureau, and then asked for the hands of those who were not members of the bureau. After that, Jackson had each member of his trade bureau from the panel and audience, except those at the head table, stand up and state his or her name, company name, and type of business. Naturally, Rainbow Push Trade Bureau membership applications were available just outside the main doors. Joining Jackson's bureau cost businesses from $250 to $2,500 per year, depending upon how much money a company grosses. Jackson and others at the meeting said that by joining Jackson's trade bureau, a business would have many doors open to it, including opportunities to do business with companies such as Toyota and BMW. BMW was mentioned by name as a company that Rainbow Push would be going after next. The implication was strong that joining the trade bureau would make a company eligible to receive contracts with Toyota. Therefore, Jackson had, in effect, set himself up as the gatekeeper of the contracts. Irv Miller of Toyota never contradicted this impression during the meeting. When it came time to make the hard close and collect the money, Jackson had an associate give a fiery sermon-like speech, letting the assembled know how much Jackson has done for blacks and how he has sacrificed to serve. It was a very hard sell, and the Jackson team went from table to table collecting checks. They also collected money for Jackson's upcoming 60th birthday bash at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. This took place with no protest or comment from Toyota. As further demonstration of his power, Jackson introduced a man seated at the table named J.L. Armstrong, a Rainbow Push member who works for Toyota, and announced that Armstrong was being promoted to head Toyota's supplier development, meaning he would be the point man between black business beneficiaries and Toyota. Jackson took responsibility for Armstrong's promotion, again without dispute from Miller of Toyota. An announcement months later of Armstrong's promotion verified the purpose of his new position. He is responsible for managing the company's progress of purchases from minority and women-owned firms. Irv Miller conducted a multimedia presentation explaining Toyota's 21st Century Diversity Program. I could see in watching Mr. Miller how afraid he appeared, and I felt sorry for him. I thought to myself, and later remarked in media appearances, that this must be the weakest white man I've ever seen. After it was completed, there was a question and answer session. I stood up and introduced myself and my organization, Bond. I said that, curiously, whenever Jesse Jackson gets money from a corporation, he never helps conservative black organizations like Bond. Already I was hearing loud, rude remarks and derisive laughter from the pro-Jackson crowd. I told Miller that we had a Home for Boys program and asked how an organization like ours could work with Toyota without having to go through Jesse Jackson and Rainbow Push. At this point, all hell broke loose in the room. Several blacks got up and started screaming obscenities at me. Judge Greg Mathis, who has his own TV show, The Judge Mathis Show, yelled at me and said, "Oh, you've been watching too much TV. You've been watching too much Bill O'Reilly." "Well, at least I don't watch your boring show," I said. Jackson crony Carl Dickerson, one of the meeting's hosts, called me stupid and told me to sit down. Once order was somewhat restored, Jonathan Jackson, one of Jesse's sons, and another man came down and tried to intimidate me. They sat down directly across from me in plain view of Jesse Jackson in the audience. They remained there and attempted to stare me down for much of the meeting. A security guard also came down from the rear of the room in an attempt to remove me. When I stayed put, Jackson eventually told the man to leave us be. Jesse Jackson was at the head of the table, no more than 10 feet in front of us. He started making derogatory comments about me and other black conservatives. He said the issue is not conservatives or liberals. The issue is some parasites who want to pick apples from trees they didn't shake. Jackson's reference to shaking a tree says a lot about the man and his motives. He admits that he shakes corporate trees for millions, and he's been very successful at it. Once the meeting was over, I got up and started to make my way to the exit, but Jonathan Jackson blocked my way out. He made insulting comments to me. I walked around him and proceeded to walk toward the exit, but the show wasn't over. On my way out, I stopped at the refreshment table and sent Ermias over to give a business card and brochure to Irv Miller of Toyota. Miller was standing by the head table chatting with a few people. When Ermias returned, we proceeded to walk toward the exit. Jonathan, accompanied by several others, came right toward me. He shoved me really hard, and I told him that he was not allowed to touch me, not to put his hands on me. At this point, we were surrounded by at least a dozen of Jackson's associates. They were calling me necktie and taunting me with other racial slurs. Jonathan Jackson was making obscene remarks and gestures to me. Jesse was there the whole time, watching his son assault me, and did nothing to stop him. Judge Mathis was yelling at me too, saying, "Where's O'Reilly when you need him? You're always on his show." I could hear Jesse Jackson in the background yelling, "Get his butt out of here." As I was verbally abused and physically assaulted, I actually began fearing for my safety. I have had guns drawn on me in the past, but my experience with Jackson and his goon squad was something I'll never forget. For the first time in my life, I felt my life was really threatened. Finally, another Jackson supporter yelled out to my assistant, Ermias, "You better get your boy out of here before he gets his butt kicked." Ermias put his arm around my chest and shoulder and pushed our way through the crowd. On our way out, we were followed by Jackson's people. Jackson didn't allow any press to cover this meeting, but one of our bond employees was recording the event. When he was discovered, Jackson's handlers removed him from the meeting. Later, our employee was able to get a short interview with Jackson because his people still didn't know the man was from my organization. As a result of these physical and verbal assaults against me, I contacted my friend Larry Clayman with Judicial Watch, and we have filed a lawsuit against Rainbow Push, Jackson Matthias, and Jonathan Jackson for assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and false imprisonment. Jonathan is also accused of battery, civil rights violations, and intentional interference with prospective economic advantage. Jackson's attempt to get my lawsuit against him and his associates dropped has failed. California Superior Court refused Jackson's request for dismissal in April 2002, so the case can now move forward. As of this writing, we are awaiting trial and look to have a date very soon. I realize that people like Jesse Jackson are evil. He has no respect for physical or spiritual laws. He may think he's going to silence me, but he will fail. Jackson needs to learn that he is not above the law, that he will not get away with his crimes, and that there will be serious consequences for his actions. Kenneth Timmerman is an investigative reporter for Insight magazine and has published a devastating expose of Jesse Jackson's racket in a recent book. Timmerman's Shakedown, Exposing the Real Jesse Jackson, is a must-read for any American, black, white, red, yellow, or brown, who wants to know the truth about Jesse Jackson's assault against our nation's corporations. Jackson has mastered the art of the shakedown by using the race card to frighten business leaders into handing his organization and his friends millions of dollars in funds, supposedly to help minorities. Timmerman exposes the fact that, quote, Reverend, unquote, Jackson is not really a properly ordained minister, that Jackson is lying when he claims that he held Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his arms after he had been shot by an assassin in Memphis, and that in Chicago he and his associates developed a cozy relationship with an extremely violent street gang known as the Blackstone Rangers, once headed by Jeff Fort. Jackson introduced his half-brother, Noah Robinson, to Fort, and Robinson and Fort began working together on various business deals in Chicago involving city contracts and other enterprises. Jeff Fort was eventually sent to jail for life in 1986 for a plot that netted him $2.5 million from Libya. He was planning on blowing up U.S. installations for Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan dictator. Noah Robinson was arrested in 1988 and convicted of murder for hire, drug trafficking, and racketeering, the same year that Jackson was running for president of the United States. Unlike his friends, Jackson opted for more, quote, legal, unquote, scams. Corporate leaders would much prefer to be shaken down for $500,000 than to get involved in costly lawsuits, boycotts, and the bad publicity that Jackson can generate by calling CEOs racist. Timmerman told WorldNetDaily.com in an interview about his book, "I've had a number of CEOs come to me and say paying Jesse Jackson $400,000 or $500,000 was the price of doing business." Toyota is far from the only company that has given in to Jackson's racket. The list is long and includes major corporations such as Coca-Cola, Boeing, AT&T, Anheuser-Busch, and Viacom. This obscene shakedown will not stop until corporate leaders get up the courage to repudiate Jackson for what he is, a shakedown artist who is enriching himself by shaking the apple trees of corporate America. This certainly requires courage. Years before Timmerman released Shakedown, a black reporter from Chicago named Barbara Reynolds wrote the first critical biography of Jackson and subsequently was run out of town and had to hire bodyguards after receiving death threats from Jackson's supporters. Timmerman told WOR New York Radio's Bob Grant, It really was on its way to becoming a bestseller until Jesse and his friends intervened with the bestsellers and everyone else. They got her kicked off the airwaves and basically run out of Chicago. Since Reynolds' experience, no other journalist until Timmerman has attempted to chronicle Jackson's exploits in book form. According to Holman W. Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal, nobody has shaken the money tree of corporate America more vigorously or more successfully in favor of his constituents. In our misnamed melting pot, no one has operated so successfully to produce gravy for an ethnic elite by insisting on discriminatory treatment. Jenkins notes that Jackson has been successful in shaking $58 million from Flagstar, owner of Denny's restaurants, $865 million from Texaco, and millions more from other corporations cowed by Jackson's screw-turning efforts. As Jenkins writes, all of these successes ride on his ability to command a spotlight and to motivate sympathizers, and they place him squarely in the tradition of Boss Tweed. He is charismatic, a glutton for attention, and untroubled by an excessive delicacy about the relationship between means and ends. In other words, a fit keeper of this particular flame. Jenkins was being nearly poetic in his description of a hustler who bullies corporations into paying his rich black friends millions of dollars so these corporations can avoid being labeled racist. His rich buddies, of course, then donate millions to his nonprofit efforts or join his trade bureau. Jackson, like a mafia don, is very good at what he does. Patrick Riley, the editor of the Capital Research Center's Organization Trends and Foundation Watch newsletters, published an extensive expose on Jackson's shady financial empire in April 2001. Riley notes that Jackson has established several different organizations that are used to shake money from corporate America. Among those are the Wall Street Project in New York, the LaSalle Street Project in Chicago, the 9th Street Project in Cleveland, the Wall Street Project West in Los Angeles, and the Silicon Valley Project in San Jose. All these machines are run under Jackson's Citizenship Education Fund, which collects large, tax-deductible donations from corporations pressured into giving him money. In 2000, Jackson's various organizations brought in $17 million. His income that year was around $430,000, including $120,000 from his organizations and $260,000, according to Jackson, from his show on CNN. His CNN gig was canceled after revelations surfaced about his mistress and love child, details of which will come later in the chapter. Other money comes from speaking and writing fees. The CEF and Rainbow Push Coalition both pay for Jackson's traveling expenses at various times, and his former chief financial officer, Billy Owens, admitted that more than $450,000 of Jackson's traveling expenses in 2000 was funded by the Democratic Party for the Get Out the Vote efforts. Of course, as millions pour into his various enterprises, there appears to be very little accountability or accurate accounting taking place. TV talk show host Bill O'Reilly of the Fox News show The O'Reilly Factor has been one of the few on-air personalities who has been attempting to get the IRS to audit Jackson's shady finances. O'Reilly has pointed out, for example, that in 1998, Jackson's nonprofit Rainbow Push organization cited $1.2 million in travel expenses, but Jackson provided no receipts to account for the money on his Illinois tax returns. In 1982, the IRS reviewed Jackson's accounts and found $1 million unaccounted for. He was forced to repay $700,000 to the feds, but did not get a penalty for failing to file accurate tax returns. Jackson continues to remain an untouchable by the IRS and by whites in general for fear of a backlash from any public attack against Jackson. One of the few corporate leaders to challenge Jesse Jackson's shakedown schemes is T.J. Rogers, who runs Cypress Semiconductor in Silicon Valley. Rogers, who is white, is fed up with Jesse Jackson's attempts to lean on the computer industry to enrich himself and his wealthy friends. Rogers expressed his disdain for Jackson in a 1999 San Jose Mercury News op-ed for which he interviewed several black leaders. I asked Gerald Reynolds, an African-American and former president of the Washington-based Center for New Black Leadership, why CEOs are so deferential to Jackson. It's simple, he told me. Jesse Jackson is a race hustler who makes his living shaking down corporations. Whites would rather be accused of being a child molester than a racist. Jesse's got the power to make corporate chieftains cower. In the piece, Rogers also related a conversation he had with Hoover Institution scholar Shelby Steele. Martin Luther King told people they had to take on the responsibility, the risk, to gain their freedom, Steele told me. Jesse Jackson tells them that they are weak, victims of prejudice, that they have no responsibility for their situation, and that they should rely on him to get the concessions that will improve their situation. In my opinion, that message of victimhood is a bigger barrier to progress than prejudice itself. Rogers wrapped it up with a stinging indictment. Once the civil rights movement was led by a great American who stirred the conscience of a nation. Today, its most visible spokesman is a hustler who exploits white shame for his own financial and political ends. It is a pity that T.J. Rogers appears to be the only leader in corporate America who has the guts to stand up to Jackson's game. Where are other white leaders who will join in exposing and repudiating this racist con artist? And we're going to take a break, and we'll be back to continue with this.
Stay tuned for more Chris Levels with Politics and Prophecy right here on WSNL Victory 600.
In 1931, the odds of getting cancer were about 3,000 to 1. But today, women have a 1 in 3 chance and men have a 50-50 chance. So what happened? What's gone wrong? In the name of science, drinking water has been chemically changed from natural and safe to harmful and dangerous. Hello, my name is Michael Kinnett, and I'm a molecular hydration specialist, and today we have a healthcare crisis of degenerative disease, like acid reflux, diabetes, fibromyalgia, osteoporosis, cancer, arthritis, and many more that are getting worse every day. Your body is 70% water and needs to feed 80 trillion cells every day to flush out the acid that's getting you sick. Bottled water, tap water, and filtered water just can't do that. Your body needs fresh, alkaline, microclustered Kangen water the way nature made it 1,000 years ago to help your body balance itself back into homeostasis and reverse or prevent the degenerative diseases that have taken over our good health. To learn more about Kangen water and to get your free Kangen water samples, visit H2ORevival.com. That's H2ORevival.com today and experience what Kangen water can do for you.
Out-of-sight mobile self-storage cuts your work in half. Why rent a truck, pack it, unpack it into storage, and then repeat the process when you take it out? With mobile self-storage, you simply pack and unpack once. We deliver one of our weatherproof units to your home or office, up to 5 at a time for the same delivery price. Other services include local, out-of-state, and specialty moves. Purchase your packing supplies from us, too. Call Out-of-Sight Mobile Self-Storage today, 248-322-9781. Visit BetterWayToStore.com.
You receive $30 off delivery when you mention Politics and Prophecy. Hurry while this offer lasts. Recently, I was traveling to Port Huron for a speaking engagement when my vehicle experienced mechanical trouble. I was on I-69 in the middle of nowhere. When I called for a tow truck, a company quoted me nearly $300. I called T&L Towing, and Larry, the owner, charged $110. His son owns Cut Rate Auto Repair, and the next morning got my car in and quickly diagnosed the problem. If there are any future repairs, I will drive to Lapeer and hand the keys to Larry and his staff. They have expertise in foreign and domestic. Make sure to mention you heard about Cut Rate Auto Repair on Politics and Prophecy when you take your car to 1313 West Imlay City Road in Lapeer, or call them today at 810-245-8888. That's 245-8888. And if you need a tow, call Larry at T&L Towing at 810-798-3393. Again, 798-3393.
You're listening to Politics and Prophecy with Chris Levels on WSNL Victory 600.
Well, we're back. It's Chris Levels at Politics and Prophecy. Studio line is 810-866-3400. Toll-free line is 866-992-2275. And I just want to say it's okay if you just want to listen, that's fine, because I've got a lot more to share with you regarding the good Reverend Jesse Jackson. So we're going to talk about his love affair with tyrants and terrorists. There is much more to the Jackson story than dishonest gain. Jackson has had a long and strange love affair with various communist and Muslim tyrants throughout his career as a, quote, civil rights leader, unquote. This seems odd since Jackson claims to be a preacher who believes in Jesus Christ. Why would he consort with murderous atheists and Muslim extremists is difficult to explain unless you realize that Jackson's entire life is simply one fraud after another. In 1979, for example, Jackson visited the Middle East and paid a friendly visit to terrorist Yasser Arafat. After their meeting, Jackson described this murderer as educated, urbane, reasonable. I think his commitment to justice is an absolute one. In 1984, He and his longtime advisor, Jack Odell, who is a Communist Party member, and Mary Tate of the U.S. Peace Council, a front for the KGB, paid a cordial visit to Syrian dictator Hafez Assad. That same year, Jackson also visited communist Cuba and described dictator Fidel Castro as the most honest, courageous politician I have ever met. And during his visit to the University of Havana, Jackson reportedly shouted out, "Long live Castro! Long live Che Guevara!" Guevara, of course, is the communist terrorist who was killed in Bolivia in 1967 for attempting to overthrow the government there. Jackson's odd connection to communist subversives was detailed in an article by WorldNet Daily editor-in-chief Joseph Farah in 2001. Farah points out the following about Jackson's close association with communists. Political affairs. The official journal of the Communist Party USA noted in its January 1984 edition that 84 electoral activity began with the formation of Rainbow Coalition in Harlem in support of Jesse Jackson's campaign for the presidency. 2. Communist Party member Jack Odell has served as Director of International Affairs for the National Rainbow Coalition. 3. Gus Hall, the late leader of the Communist Party USA, endorsed Jackson for president in 1988. 4. In 1985, Jackson was a keynote speaker to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the communist takeover of Vietnam. The event was sponsored by the Communist Party. 5. Jackson was a speaker at a 1984 symposium sponsored by the Marxist Black Scholar magazine. All of these unsavory relationships make one wonder about the character of this self-proclaimed preacher. These relationships reveal the true nature and goals of Jackson, not his carefully spun media image as one who helps the downtrodden and is motivated by a concern for civil rights. Jackson appears to be sympathetic to Marxist causes as well as Islamic causes that will undermine international stability and lead to more war and strife. It will lead to the institution of dictatorships or the strengthening of existing ones over millions in the Middle East and Africa. For a man who claims to hold the mantle of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a visionary who dreamed of freedom for his people, Jackson seems strangely fond of slavery. Although the National Enquirer is usually associated with unethical or flawed journalism, this scandal rag got it right in its January 10, 2001 issue. The headline reads, "Jesse Jackson's love child. His 38-year marriage blows up over secret family. He even took pregnant mistress to meet Clinton in Oval Office." The article then details the fact that Jackson had maintained a secret 4-year adulterous affair with his former aide, Karen Stanford. She had given birth to his baby on May 1st, 1999. The story says he had been secretly paying her about $10,000 a month after DNA tests proved that he was the father. Stanford told the Enquirer that she had received a payment of $40,000 before taking maternity leave from her job as the director of Jackson's Rainbow Coalition office in Washington, D.C. She quietly relocated from Washington to Los Angeles, where she continued to work as a part-time researcher for Jackson's organization. The Enquirer noted that she had purchased a $365,000 home in a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood. Connie Chung interviewed Stanford in August 2001. Stanford told Chung that she had gone to court to make sure she would continue to get $4,000 a month in child support payments from Jackson. He had asked her to sign a confidentiality agreement and she refused. She admitted that it didn't matter to her that Jackson was already married and had 5 children. She told Chung, "From what I understood about Reverend Jackson's marriage was that it was basically a political marriage." A talk show host and guest on CNN then began to spread the falsehood that Stanford was a, quote, stalker of Jackson, and because she had gone public with her revelations of his love child. This same tactic was used by Clinton supporters against Kathleen Wiley, Jennifer Flowers, Juanita Broaddrick, and other women who accused Clinton of sexual misconduct. The goal is always to vilify the victim of sexual exploitation and justify the perpetrator's actions, but only if he's a certified liberal. On CNN's Talk Back Live program in August 2001, Tavis Smiley brought up the issue of so-called political stalking, referring to Stanford as a stalker. Smiley then asked associate and guest Tom Joyner, "Do you think there's any credence to this notion that Jesse Jackson is being politically stalked either by the media or by the mother in this case?" Joyner replied, "I think he is stalked by both. I think it is pretty evident that he is, and it is a shame that the child is being exploited for someone else's agenda, be it the mother or be it the media, but this child is being exploited." Moments later, Stanford called in and began berating them for suggesting that she was a political stalker. She told these liberal hosts that she tried to get formal arrangements from Jackson that he would provide for his child's education, but that he had refused to do so. She also made an interesting comment. Not one African-American media organization reached out to me to ask me a question. What you guys seem to do is print Reverend Jackson's statements, his perspective, without asking me. Most of the other news organizations would at least try to get two sides to the story before they go on the national TV and start calling me a stalker, because I'm just not that. After I watched Karen Stanford talk about her situation with Jackson on ABC's 2020 that August, I issued a press release calling upon Jackson to stop calling himself a preacher. Jackson's exposure as an adulterer once again shows what a hypocritical fraud he is. In the press release, I said this man is in favor of killing other people's unborn babies, but not his own. He counsels Bill Clinton about his affair with Monica Lewinsky and brings his pregnant mistress. And he says he won't appear on a TV show because the media will hurt the child. It's being without a father that will cause the damage. And he has the gall to continue calling himself Reverend. Now is the time to stand on moral principle and demand that Jackson drop the title Reverend and speak out against this immoral man. With a record like this, wait a minute, hold on. We'll go there. With a track record like this, it is amazing Jackson is still around and as popular as he is. He has been coddled by a compliant liberal media and fawned over by leftist talk show hosts who still pay homage to him in spite of his adultery, financial intimidation, and obvious efforts to exploit racial tensions wherever he can find them. Jackson has also been protected by liberal politicians, such as those within the Congressional Black Caucus. The IRS has largely kept a hands-off policy when it comes to Jackson's confusing business arrangements and nonprofit organizations. And in my view, the state of Illinois is still giving Jackson a get-out-of-jail-free card to continue his practice of not itemizing consulting or travel expenses on his tax returns. Jesse Jackson is a disgrace to his race, and I'm curious about his political loyalties. Are they to the United States or some other foreign power or political ideology that is a threat to the security of America? He seems to be more comfortable in the company of communists, extremist politicians, and murderous street gang leaders than with any other religious or social groups. You say a lot about who you are by the company you keep. Jesse Jackson is a major player in reversing our nation's civil rights gains over the past 40 years. By either creating or exploiting racial tensions, he is continually adding fuel to the racial fire. Racism is largely a thing of the past. Yet if you're Jesse Jackson, racism is your bread and butter and your ticket to power and millions of dollars. For all these reasons, for more than a dozen years now, I have been calling upon Americans of all ethnic backgrounds and religious beliefs to rise up and repudiate Jesse Jackson. 4 years ago, we took it up a notch. Bond held its first National Day of Repudiation of Jesse Jackson on January 17, 2000 at the Federal Building in Westwood, California. I was joined in this protest by Izola Foster, Joyce Smith, head of Rejoice Ministries in Houston, Texas, talk show host Bob Enyart, and Baptist preacher Dr. Wiley Drake of the First Southern Baptist Church of Buena Park. In my remarks, I vowed that I would hold a National Day of Repudiation against Jackson every year until he repents of his ways and stops attempting to tear the races apart for his own personal gain. I believe Dr. King is turning over in his grave, seeing what has become of his movement due to the likes of Jackson. I told those gathered for this event that Jesse Jackson is nothing more than David Duke in black skin. And we're going to take a break, come back, and finish up the rest of this.
Stay tuned for more Chris Levels with Politics and Prophecy right here on WSNL Victory 600.
There have been many of you that have heard the Kangen water commercials on this show and have visited the H2O Revival site and requested information. Well, we are going to do something special for you. On May 15th, we are hosting a free barbecue along with a presentation given by 6A member Don Gordon. This man has spoken all over the country about Kangen water and done many demonstrations. Email me at politicsandprophecy@gmail.com if you are interested in attending. The price is free, but we must know in advance how many visitors to expect. On May 15th, you will get to meet and speak with me also as we enjoy a few hours of fun and fellowship together. Email me at politicsandprophecy@gmail.com for more information and to RSVP. Or call G&L Communications at 810-407-6893. That's 810-407-6893.
Hello, my name is Joe. I was introduced to Kangen water about 2 months ago. I was given 3 gallons of the water with this request. Drink this water and tell me what you think. And see if changing the water you drink will change your life. I drank the water, and boy, was I in for a surprise. Number one, I liked it, the way it tastes. But it was different, I thought. But it's just water. Within a few days, I was not feeling the soreness that I felt in my joints. My skin condition, psoriasis, was improving. My energy level, which was normally good, reached another level. I actually stopped drinking sodas without even thinking about it. And in the 2 months, I have been changing the balance of the alkalinity and acidity levels in my body. I've seen the benefit of drinking magic water. Try Kangen water. I think you'll love it. Find out what it can do for you.
To enjoy Kangen water and have your own life-changing experience, visit H2ORevival.com. Again, that's H2ORevival.com. Your health will never be the same.
Here is Chris Levels with more Politics and Prophecy here on Victory 600 WSNL.
And you're back with Chris Levels on Politics and Prophecy. And we're going to continue as we wrap this up for the show today. The first National Day of Repudiation came in the wake of one of Jackson's frequent efforts to create racial hatred. The incident in Decatur, Illinois, at a high school football game was still being talked about in the press. As you may recall, 6 black MacArthur High students were expelled after going on a rampage through the crowd, hitting students and knocking people over. The school, of course, did the right thing by expelling them. They were unruly hooligans. Jesse Jackson, always ready to exaggerate any racial incident, immediately descended on the town and started crying racism against school authorities. After organizing the usual rent-a-mob, Jackson and more than 2,000 angry protesters marched through the streets of Decatur, demanding that the students' 1-year suspension be cut further. Jackson was once again exposed for what he is, a cold, selfish manipulator. Time and again he lies in wait only to spring up when he can inflame a racial situation. He doesn't care a bit about the thugs he was protecting or the rest of the students at the high school. This is just how Jackson operates. At our second National Day of Repudiation of Jesse Jackson in January 2001, we had just gone through a horrendous battle in Florida over Dimple Chaz. Jackson had done his best to create racial unrest in Florida. He made false claims that Republicans had intimidated black voters and demanded a federal investigation. He also made national headlines by leading protests against the election of George W. Bush as our president, and he accused the U.S. Supreme Court of engineering a coup d'etat. At our third Repudiation Day in 2002, a group of radical leftist Mexicans showed up to counter-protest. They were intent on creating a violent confrontation, but when we didn't take the bait, unfortunately, no one was injured. For a man who claims to be a reverend and man of God, Jackson certainly has some dangerous and violent friends. We held our fourth National Day of Repudiation January 2003 in front of Jackson's Rainbow Push office in Cecil Murray's famed Renaissance Center building in South Central Los Angeles. Joining me in this protest were talk show host and WorldNetDaily.com columnist Jane Chastain, activist Ted Hayes, Pastor Drake, and Rabbi Nachum Shifrin. Imagine men and women, black and white, Gentile and Jew, all together for a great cause. This is the real Rainbow Coalition. I'm going to leave off here because we're running out of time, but I hope you've gotten a clearer picture of the good Reverend Jesse Jackson and the harm that people like him are actually doing to this country in terms of even allowing people who are in unfortunate circumstances to, instead of climbing out of those and educating themselves and going to their faith and allowing God to move in their life, he is allowing them to exercise victimhood, and yet they don't profit. He and his minions profit off of it. So this is the kind of thing that I said that I would stand up against. I don't care if you are black. I don't care if you are white. If you are going to try to take advantage of another human being just because of the color of their skin, I'm going to stand up and say you're wrong and be willing to even die for that if I have to, because of the fact that we are to love each other as we love ourselves. And yet it seems that the prevailing attitude, especially in those that have sway over the opinions in the media, is that to love yourself and don't care about anything else or anybody else unless they agree with your warped world opinion and view. So these are the things that this show is about. I hope you will help me to keep it on. And on tomorrow, you will have You'll be with Pastor Irvin Baxter with Politics and Religion. And then on Wednesday, I'm not quite sure who the guest is. We were trying to get Alan Keyes, and hopefully he will respond, but I'm not going to make that promise at this time. I might just have to go and deal with Louis Farrakhan on Wednesday if that's the case. So nevertheless, you won't be bored. You will be entertained, and I will be looking forward to being with you and sharing knowledge. So this is Chris Levels. I want you to have a blessed day in Jesus' name. Lord willing, I'll be back with you on Wednesday, and have a great day.
You've been listening to Politics and Prophecy. We trust this broadcast has been a blessing to you, and it is your monthly support that guarantees its continuation on WSNL. Please write to them today at G&L Communications, P.O. Box 13171, Flint, Michigan 48503. And remember, when you write them, be sure to mention you heard their broadcast on Victory 600 WSNL.